Hello and welcome to TAL Radio. At TAL, we connect those who are willing to give to those who are in need. And giving is not an easy thing, as I always say. Right now, you are listening and watching to a beautiful series on self coaching. And as usual, I have with me, along with me, Andrew Tallent. Andrew is actually a self coaching expert. And it has been my pleasure to host him for the last three episodes. And believe it or not, listeners are really enjoying and finding it really informative and something very different to what they really watch on social media. So, Andrew, welcome to Tal Radio. Thank you so much for joining in.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. And yes, as I mentioned, that this is actually the fourth episode that we are doing on self coaching series. We have actually learned a lot about self coaching, but I think today is something really special because the topic itself it's very intriguing. Wheel of life. And I'm sure everybody's heart might have skipped a beat. And if it hasn't, believe it or not, when Andrew dives into Wheel of Life, it will skip a beat. So, Andrew, over to you. Just dive into and tell us, what is Wheel of Life?
Sure. What I'll do is I'll link this to our last topic around self-leadership, which this builds on. I'll talk about what the Wheel of Life is and where it came from. Maybe then go into talking about an example so people that are listening to this can actually take something away and do it themselves to understand. And then we can go into some questions that come up in terms of the Wheel of Life itself, if that's okay. So, this builds on the self-leadership. So we talked last time about having responsibility to lead ourselves effectively. So having that intention to lead ourselves in life in the important areas for us. And sometimes we don't know where to start with that. So the Wheel of Life was originated in 1960 by Paul Mayer, who at the time was in the Success Motivation Institute. So if you look back to 1960 in the Wheel of Life, you'll see the original ideas around this. And all it does, it enables one individual to understand the different areas of their life, hence the Wheel of Life, and understand where they're focusing energy and attention right now, just to assess whether actually they should be investing their time there. So I'll explain how it looks and then give an example, and then we can talk about how useful it might be. So I want the listeners to really visualize a clock face with 12 points on it. And you will have 12 elements on this clock face that represent parts of your life. And what we're going to talk about straight away is roles. So the roles that you play in life, because each role you play in life, you have to lead yourself. So I'm going to talk about each of the roles that I play in life in those 12 areas. And then we can talk about how we might use this Wheel of Life in terms of everyday situations. And hopefully you can relate to this. So for me, in terms of the 12, the first one is father to my children. That's the first role. The second is grandfather to my grandchildren. I have two now. The third is brother. The fourth is husband. The fifth is founder of my company, because I'm the only one that founded the company. The sixth for me is my business partner relationship. So I'm a business partner to other people and to TAL Radio. The seventh is my involvement with the local golf club, of which I'm passionate about. I play a role there. The eighth is public speaking, like this and all the events I public speak at. So that's a role for me I play in life. The ninth is my leader of the self-coaching movement, which I'm passionate about. So I play a role in that. 10th is podcast host for me, because I host my own podcast. 11th is a charity volunteer. So I volunteer for various charities. And the 12th is a friend to my friends. So they are all 12 roles that I play. There are many more, but they're my real 12 roles. And they're the, if you like, the elements of the clock face that we can think about at number 1, number 2, number 3, all the way to 12. So the way that the Wheel of Life works, if you imagine the circle of the clock face and each of those roles you have around the edge, is to take the first one, so for me, father, and just to say, out of a score of 1 to 10 right now, how happy am I in terms of the role I'm playing as a father? 10 being, I'm very happy. I'm totally fulfilling that role. I'm there for my children when they need me. And 1, I'm very absent. I don't see my children. I'm probably not there for them. I'm traveling too much. And just allocate a score, 1 to 10. And then do that for each of the 12 roles. And then it enables you just get some very quick insight in terms of how you're feeling yourself about the roles that you play in life.
That's really nice. And I'm sure The way you just elaborate it, it's like technically having your professional and your personal life, the different spheres of it, and just trying to see how good you are at. But when you were talking about, try to uh, probably rate yourself on a scale of 10. I was just wondering, do people really give good marks to them, or are they scared of it, or they're like hesitant, like, am I really doing? Because when you have to judge yourself, it's not an easy thing.
It isn't. And so therefore, what's really useful to do this is two things. One, make the scores. And if you're quite judgment oriented around yourself, some of them are going to be lower. If you are kinder to yourself, some are going to be higher. But I think it's useful then to share with someone else in your life, a partner or a friend, the scores that you've given, for them to give feedback to you about whether you're scoring too lowly or being too hard on yourself or being kind. Now, in a way, it doesn't matter what we score because it's all relative. So even if I score myself very lowly on everything, I'm still going to have numbers that are higher and I'm still going to have numbers that are lower. So for me, it's about the extremes. If I've got a 10 in my father role, I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that. I probably don't need to invest time in understanding how I can change my role in that. But if I've got a 1 in charity volunteer because my charity work has fallen by the wayside recently, it enables me to say, what can I do to improve my involvement in the charity sector? Just raises my awareness.
So, when we talk about this wheel of life and we talk about these different spheres, whether it's professional or whether it's personal, are they correlated also in a way? Because it's really difficult to separate yourself from your office once you get back home. And probably it's the vice versa also.
It is. It's absolutely true. And actually, if you ask most people what they are in life and what they do in life, they usually say they have 2 or 3 roles. So I'm in my workplace, I have a role there, I have my role at home. All this does is actually open up to multi-dimensions in terms of the aspects of that professional life and personal life, just so we can look, do we feel happy with where we are in that role right now? And the only reason that we won't be happy is not because somebody else has affected that. It's our own lack of self-leadership in that particular role, and we can decide to do something about it or not. So it's just a really lovely insight tool. And if you go on to the website and type in Wheel of Life, you'll see the different examples of this. And you can do little scores and spider web diagrams in the middle if you want to see it more visually. But essentially, you're just giving a relative score. The lower scores, you need to put your attention into, do I need to do something with this? And the higher scores, give yourself a pat on the back. I'm showing up in these particular roles. But it's amazing when you get into this, how it shifts some of your mindset into where you might need to spend some of your time.
And Andrew, are there certain parameters on which you need to assess yourself, when you talk about, for example, you have maybe you're playing 12 role, but as you mentioned, there are people who are probably just, weighing themselves, maybe just 2 to 3 or maybe 4 roles. How does one assess himself or herself in this?
It's a good question. Again, it's about talking to other people. So what roles they have in life, how do they score themselves? And it's really lovely to do this with somebody else, actually. So rather than do it on our own, do it with a partner and just both do and see what scores come up with each other. So it's about being kind to yourself, make it fun, because if we do that, it means we'll get some insight about where we need to spend time in life. Now, the other aspect, which is important, is if we actually do the Wheel of Life again, but not with roles in our life, but actually things that happen around us. So things that are important to us in life. So it's not our roles, it's what's important. So you happy for me to move on to that one? So again, we have,
we would love to listen to that.
Yeah, so that's great. So we have the 12 numbers of the clock again in terms of the wheel. And I'll share with you mine. So these are things that are important to me in my life. These are not roles this time, they're aspects of my life and things that contribute to my life. And I'll just explain them and we can think about these. So the first I've got here is career and business. How do I feel about my career and my business? The second is my financial situation. So how do I feel about the finances I have right now? We all have emotive feelings about that. The third is my health, my own sort of well-being. How do I feel about my health right now around that? Fourth is family. So how do I feel about being part of the family? What's my feelings around that? The fifth, a very important one, is romance. How do I feel in relationship with romance? So that's maybe about a long lost love or a current partner or what I might be looking for in my partner. So romance is important. Sixth is personal growth. So how am I growing as a human being and individual to meet my potential? The seventh, very important, how do I relax and have fun in my leisure time? How do I switch off? How am I kind to myself to recuperate? Eighth, very important, spirituality. Whether so because I believe in a God, or whether I actually believe in something different to that. What's spiritual for me, and how do I feel about that at the moment? Am I connected or disconnected? Ninth is my friends, so my relationships. How do I feel about that? 10, contributing to society. How do I contribute outside of what I do every day in terms of community, volunteering, etc.? 11, my living environment. So that includes my house, my where I live, my work environment. How is that conducive to how I feel? And then finally, the start of this topic, self-leadership. How do I feel about the way I'm leading myself at the moment? How am I actually showing up with that? So this is different to the first model, because even though it's the wheel of life, it's about the things that are happening around us and how we're actually relating to that, as opposed to the roles that we play. And again, we score ourselves out of 10 in each of those areas. 10 being, yeah, I feel actually I'm making progress in that area. I'm happy with that. 1, I'm not actually happy with, say, my personal growth at the moment. I need to invest time in that by reading or training or whatever it might be. So it's just a different dynamic, a different perspective that's separate to our roles in life.
Well, I'm sure because the second wheel of life that you just talked about, most of the people who are listening to or watching to us right now, or maybe in the future also, will certainly relate to it, because these are technically not the personal role, but maybe as a holistic point of view, a helicopter view that,
Yes.
you just gave to us. And most of the people would be having these dimensions, these spheres, these probably hand clocks in their life. But if I may ask you, because you have coached so many people, so many leaders around the world, when talking about the second wheel of life and these 12 dimensions, what is that people weigh a lot?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I think a lot of them obviously are focused on their own career success and financial outcomes. So a lot of is driven around that. They always seem dissatisfied with that and always wanting to improve in it. But we can also particularly now relate to, in our environments, our own mental well-being and our health. I think that's now coming to the forefront. Why am I working so hard to get all this money if I'm actually ill or can't actually show up in the way I want to show up? So there's much more awareness around good mental well-being now as well. I tend to get less around the romance coming through in terms of these kind of sessions, but also I think it's about that spirituality. I think there is more of a connection now as well, whether we call that purpose in life or just positivity or what we believe in. I think there's more of that that's becoming talked about now. So all of those 12 I've described are important, but they're the elements that come up the most.
When you talked about purpose in life, I think that is something that really struck me, because I think this is what everybody wants to know. Because believe it or not, because of this rapid globalization and so many things are made because of internet, people are having very limited time, and everybody is just racing around. And believe it or not, people are in the rat race today, and everybody is trying to find a purpose in life. What would you say? Do people are like, can people really find their purpose as such in life? Are they able to do it?
Great question. We will go to this in a later topic in more depth, but for today, there are two things that can enable that. The first is the organization that you work for or in service of enables you to work out what your purpose is, because you connect with the organization. So that's the first thing. If your organization doesn't allow you to do that, you can ask yourself one question and think about it deeply and relate to it, and then see what comes up for you when you ask yourself this question. So the question is, if I had no limitations at all in the world, no financial limitations, no health limitations, no location restrictions, I had no limitations in the world, what would I spend the rest of my life doing? Now, that in itself is a question for you to ponder and to really deeply try and understand what the answer is. Gives you a sense of what your purpose in life might be. It doesn't mean you can live it right now today, because we do have limitations. But actually, the limitations we have are more in our minds as opposed to material limitations. So that, for me, is always a question that opens up people's mind to what their purpose in life is. And you'll be amazed at what people come up with when they really think about that, and they can
We
start
would
to work
love
towards
to
it.
know. We
Yeah.
would love to know. I mean, if you could just give us a glimpse of what people really think about. I mean, no names. I think we can still have the answer, maybe one or two. What do really people, what's their purpose? And especially to this question, the answer to this question, that if they had no limitation, where would they be? What would they be doing?
Sure. There are two things that come up a lot. The first is to have choice in life. Okay, so rather than having to do things, in this moment, I have choice. of what I do. That's the first thing. And the second thing, which may surprise some of the listeners, but it is always the case, it's actually being in service of other people. It's something that's in service of other people, a community, somebody that can relate to what's happened to them in the past, to learn from what they've learned from. It normally is in service of some people on the planet, normally.
Well, I completely understand. Especially when you said that people really pondered about these questions, and it must be bringing a very different personality and a perspective towards life itself in front of them, not just in front of you, but in front of them, as such, at a very different perspective. So moving on, when you just talked about two beautiful spheres of life and how you correlated them. I think the next thing that something that really striked in my mind, we have a concept of karma. It's like what goes around comes around. Do you find a similarity in these two? I mean, just a question, maybe out of the box, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think so. Because again, if, and it's really interesting about karma, I think as we become more mature in life, we start to understand more about that. And it comes back to what we talked about in previous episodes, where it's almost like this unconditional love or presence, whatever you want to call it, that we actually give unconditionally. And then over time, things come back. So again, if we can look at the wheel of life and look at the things that are important to us about the purpose and try and give as much as we can to those areas, then we will get things back. So no, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think in the West, we've got more difficulty connecting with that because there's a lot more take first. And unfortunately, that leads to, obviously having less received in that sense. But yeah, I certainly think there's a lot behind that kind of concept.
Absolutely, because when I was reading about, the wheel of life, this is how I could connect the dot, because it's like you really need to introspect and you need to give your best, because when you give your best, that is how you get the best. So that's a beautiful correlation. So moving on, when we talk about wheel of life, what is that one thing that people really want to focus upon? In what aspect, in which sphere they really want to improve upon in life?
So usually it's about relationships. So if I do the two wheels of life, about my role in life and also my environment and the things that are happening to me, it's about how can I, in relationship to those things, change the outcomes. I think too many people want things to change without them actually inputting. They just say, I wish this wasn't happening, or I wish this person would do that, or I wish my sister would do this. Whereas what we can do is look at the actual outcome that we want in these particular roles in life and try and make them happen by being proactive and leading ourselves. So it's mainly about relationships. That's the best way to think about it. How am I in relationship with the people that are in these different roles? How can I be different in the future? And I've got to try and initiate it because nobody else is going to do it first. I've got to do it for me.
Okay. And I think, again, I'm going to put you at one spot, and that is when
Sure.
we talk about wheel of life. Is it completely dependent on us? Is it independent of other people and other spheres that we have in our life? Or are we the self leader of this wheel of life which belongs to us? Or somehow it is connected with others?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's definitely connected with others. I guess what I would say is it's got to be initiated by us. So if we want our life to be such a way relating to those particular roles and those situations, we have to lead first our first steps towards that. However, we also have other people in our lives that will be affected by the behaviors that we take, and therefore we need to involve them, we need to engage with them, and they have their own wheels of life that they're trying to partake in. We could actually be very curious about somebody else's wheel of life and understand where they're playing their roles in life now and how they want to change that, and us to offer our support with them. And indeed, when we're offering our support to them, it can even be doing what we want to do in our wheel of life. So definitely understanding other people's perspectives, the roles they play. How many times have you met somebody where it appears that they are someone, and yet you find out the role they play in a charity somewhere, which you weren't even aware of, and they are playing that role? So it's about curiosity, understanding, patience, tolerance, presence, and being proactive in your relationship with others. That means they are all connected. But start with ourselves. We can't start with other people. Start with ourselves.
Start with ourselves. That is truly a magnificent line, because it is so difficult to introspect yourself and really try to maybe rank yourself in a way, because we feel that we are doing the best.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something, a bar that we have already set, or probably the society has said, and I'm really fulfilling all these roles beautifully. But still, when you really introspect, you will really find some kind of flaws because nobody is perfect, as they say. So moving on, Andrew, probably one of the last question of this episode that I'm going to put up on you is, what is the message, or probably what is the advice that you actually give to people when they talk about wheel of life, or when they're planning to balance the wheel of life?
It's a really good question. So before I give the advice, I get them to really connect with how they feel about the wheel that they've drawn. So if they draw it on a piece of paper, to see it visually and see where the numbers are in each of those roles and each of those environments that they're in, get them to feel and connect with what do they feel about it. Get them to feel positive about the numbers that are actually high for them. Get them to feel curious about the numbers that are lower. And my advice to them at that point is to actually find one step that they can take tomorrow to actually work on one of those areas where they can start to improve how they feel about their role or the elements situated into their lives, that they can make a difference in. Just one thing. Then when they've done that, think about the next thing and the next thing, just one step at a time. And by doing that, they'll start to make a difference in getting more balance.
I think you really summed it up very beautifully. One step at a time. Let's not hurry up with things because if things are broken, they'll take their own pace to probably get fixed. So thank you so much, Andrews, and beautiful, always lovely talking to you. And thank you so much for telling so much is about Wheel of Life. And I'm sure people who are listening to us right now, watching to us right now, must have taken some intellectuality, I would say, from this very episode. Thank you so much. And thanks a lot to our lovely viewers. Thanks a lot to our lovely audience. Beautiful series that you're listening to right now is called Self Coaching. Thanks a lot.